Hello. So I'm going to continue talking about reasonable adjustments and how that comes. So if you're listening to the part about the role of the Senko, I just briefly touched on that at the very end and what is a reasonable adjustment. So let's share my screen to bring that up because it's quite interesting, I think, to what we need to do on there. So, as I said, reasonable adjustment or changes or accommodations schools must make to remove or reduce barriers that might disadvantage a child with SEND, and to ensure the child can access learning and participate in school life as fully as possible. The adjustment should be proactive and tailored to the child's individual needs, ensuring compliance with both the Equality Act and the SEND Code of Practice. So, key considerations for reasonable adjustment. Schools should consider the following when deciding what is reasonable. Effectiveness. Does the adjustment help the child overcome the disadvantage they are experiencing? Does the adjustment help the child Why? My brain. So, for example, providing a quiet sensory break area can help a child with autism manage sensory overload. Practicality. Can the adjustment be implemented without causing significant disruption to the school or other pupils? For example, moving a class to a ground floor room for a child with mobility issues is typically practical. Cost. The cost of the adjustment should be reasonable within the school's budget. Schools can seek additional funding through the local authority, example, through the notional SEND budget or educational healthcare plan funding, if costs are higher. So the notional budget is when I used to go on about the school gets £6,000 per child if they're on the special needs register. They have £6,000 available through the notional budget, but it's not given to them. They have to apply for it to put things into place. That's just where I was wrongly informed, and I was strongly adamant that this was based on the information I had been given. But the school can apply for notional funding to put certain adjustments into place. And if they go over, it's a £6,000 limit. If they go that £6,000, that's when the EHCP funding should be coming into place. So when if we have been to mediation or tribunal and they're saying no, the school should be able to meet the child's needs within their budget, it's this £6,000 notional budget that the school aren't using in the need for your child for whatever reason. There could be a very good reason, but we need to find out why that is and then go from there. You don't need the full £6,000 to be used because that's just a local authority policy. It's not legislation. So legislation trumps policy. So if they say you've got to do that, we haven't. There's a need, and again, talk to ourselves. Impact on others. Adjustments should balance a child's needs with the needs of other pupils and staff. So if we're making a reasonable adjustment, what impact does that have on the class, the teacher, the whole school? That has to be taken into consideration. And is there an alternative? Always look at the alternatives. Individual needs. Adjustments must be specific to the child's condition, not generic approaches. For instance, a child with dyslexia might require access to reading software, whilst a child with ADHD might benefit from regular movement breaks. Yeah. Examples of reasonable adjustment here are common adjustments schools should consider. Environmental adjustments, providing a quiet or low stimulation workspace for children with sensory processing difficulties or autism. Installing wheelchair ramps or accessible toilets for children with physical disabilities. The accessible toilets, I don't think should just be for physical disabilities. A lot of our children cannot go into toilets because of hand dryers. If you've got hand dryers in toilets, the noise is too much and somebody might just come in and do that. So accessing toilets for some of our children, particularly with sensory needs, is crucial, and therefore disabled or accessibility toilets should be accessible to children of all needs, not just physical disabilities. Curricular adjustments, offering differentiated tasks or alternative ways to demonstrate learning. Example, oral presentations instead of written work for a child with dyslexia. allowing additional time for tasks and adjustments. There's all sorts of things within the curricular adjustments that can be made. I'm not going to go into them because you can phone us up and talk to us if it's not happening, but there are a lot that we can look at. Supportive resources, providing assistive technologies such as text-to-speech software for children with reading difficulties, offering large print or braille for resources for children with visual impairment. Policy adjustment, modifying behaviour policies to consider underlying SEND needs, recognising that a meltdown may be a result of anxiety, not deliberate defiance. So it should be in there. So yeah, a teacher got hit. Well, why did they get hit? The child had a meltdown, and or the child's behaviour was very aggressive. Yeah, well, it wasn't the behaviour was aggressive. Is that you weren't giving that child the space and time they needed to do it. You were just going on and on and on and on. This is where the adjustment would need to come in for understanding what a meltdown is, and it's the anxiety based on what you are doing as an individual, and it's not to do with an anger management situation or whatever. Adjusting uniform policies for sensory sensitive children, allowing softer fabrics or different styles. How many of you have arguments with school about school policy, about school uniform? It's in here. It should be an adjustment. Okay. Flexibility, allowing part-time attendance or staggered start times for children with health issues or anxiety. It's not good enough to say my child suffers from anxiety. You need to actually have it identified. Make sure you've gone to the doctor. Make sure, if necessary, you've been referred to Healthy Minds or CAMS, so that we can actually state that my child does have an anxiety and it is there. It may be that you've got a diagnosis of autism, and within that diagnosis, it talks about anxiety. Highlight that to sort of say, this is why this is happening. Offering additional breaks or free movement for children with ADHD. It is important to offer regular breaks and not just sort of say, well, we're getting one in 10 minutes. Well, you might need it now. Yeah, just go and take a little bit of a wander, come back in 2 minutes. They'll still learn, they'll still catch up. But if you don't let them do it, you've lost that child for the whole day or almost. So allow them the breaks. It makes it much, much easier. Communication support, using visual timetables or social stories for children who struggle with transitions and understanding routines can be helpful if it's done in the right way. Providing interpreters or communication aids for children with hearing impairments. That's self-explanatory. Why these adjustments are considered reasonable. Legality. The Equality Act 2010 requires schools to anticipate the need of SEND pupils and prevent discrimination. Failure to make reasonable adjustments can be deemed unlawful. Sorry, I don't know why that's just popped up. Fairness and equality, adjustment levels at the playing field ensures all children have equal access to education. Impact on outcomes. When adjustments are effective, they enable SEND children to achieve their potential and participate fully in school life. It's not rocket science, this, is it? And yet we have so many battles over reasonable adjustments. Why? We know why. Implementing reasonable adjustments fosters an inclusive school culture, benefiting all pupils and promoting understanding. Unreasonable adjustments. Schools are not required to make adjustments that compromise the safety or education of other students, incur a disproportionate cost that cannot be met within the available funding, and fundamentally change the nature of the school or curriculum. So let's look at that middle one. Schools cannot, due to disproportionate costs that cannot be met by available funding. Available funding will be the £6,000 EHCP, and then the school will say, still can't meet need, can't meet need, can't meet need. Schools cannot say we cannot meet need, unless it's we cannot meet need based on the funding available for this child. So they should then go to the local authorities to look for additional funding. They could also go and look for funding applications to other places where they could get the adaptations that may be required. So it's a matter of, well, we can't do it yet because we don't have the funding. We're going to have to make applications and provisions to try and get that in. But as things stand at the moment, we cannot meet need, and we need your help to go to local authorities. We'll go to the local authorities to do this, and if you can talk to them as well, if you can find out if there are any funding streams that we could go to help put this in place, that would be great. Work with the school, but just because it says it's disproportionate cost they cannot do, that doesn't mean it's the end of it. They can go, because if your child says, I want this school, this is a school I want to go to, because it's just where I feel comfortable or whatever, then yeah, the local authorities and the school have to take that into consideration and say, yes, we can come here. School can't meet need, so let's get the money so that they can meet need, to provide the one-to-one, to make the adaptations, etc., etc. So it doesn't mean it's the be all and end all. We just have to look at what it is, and a reasonable adjustment um, is going to be different for every child. So it might be, well, yeah, I can do that for that child, but I can't do it for that because their needs are different to your needs. And what you're asking for really isn't that adjustment that is beneficial for your child there. Even though you think it is, it's not. So we need to look at reasonable adjustments and bounce the idea off of somebody. Don't just think in my head it's a reasonable adjustment. Go to somebody else and say, do you think that is? I'll tell you. I'll tell you if it's a reasonable adjustment. I'm very good at that. I'll tell the schools if I think it's a reasonable adjustment, but I'll also tell you if it's wrong, if you are going down the wrong road, and to think of another alternative that may be slightly better for the school and for your child, but will still give the same outcome, and that you may be just causing yourselves more headaches than necessary if there is another alternative to go around. So the conclusion of all this is reasonable adjustments are about removing barriers, ensuring SEND pupils can thrive in their educational environment. Schools must take a thoughtful case-by-case approach, balancing practicality with the needs and rights of the child. By working closely with parents, pupils, and external professionals, schools can ensure adjustments are effective, proportionate, and inclusive. When discussing reasonable adjustments in the context of the Quality Act 2010, the phrase compromise the safety or education of other students refers to situations where an adjustment made for a pupil with SEND could negatively affect the well-being, learning, or rights of other pupils. This consideration ensures that adjustments for one individual do not create significant risk or disadvantages for others in the school community. And that's really important. We don't want to create problems for other people just for the sake of our child. We have to look at it from both sides of the panel, and making sure that the schools aren't hiding behind that as well. Would it cause a problem? Show me what that problem would be, and I'll agree. Don't show me, then I'm not going to agree to it until you can show me that it does cause a reasonable. But be reasonable yourself as well, so that you can sort of look as though you are working with the school. So what it means in practice: compromising safety, adjustments should not create a physical or emotional safety risk for other students or staff. A child displaying physical aggressive behaviour due to their SEND might require specific intervention. While the school must support the child, adjustments that result in repeated harm to peers or staff without effective risk management plans could be considered unreasonable. Allowing a child with SEND to bypass safety rules, example, not wearing protective equipment in a science lab, could endanger themselves or others. These things need to be explored properly, because sometimes when we talk about repeated harm in that, it's the way that the staff are talking to children that creates the meltdown, that creates the behaviour, that creates the risk. So it's not a matter of just sort of looking at, well, the child are doing this. It's looking at what has caused this and where does the adjustment need to be made. I found a lot of the adjustment needs to be made with the teachers or the parents to reduce the meltdowns and the behaviours, not the other way around. It's what we are doing that's causing that, and so that's what I would be working around, etc. Compromising education, adjustment should not excessively disrupt the learning environment of unfair, impede the education or other students. Examples: if a child frequently has loud meltdowns in class and no measures, alternative spaces to de-escalate plans are in place to manage this, it could disrupt the learning of other peers. So make sure there are places that that child can go to and feel happy to go to if they're getting dysregulated. And they'll know if they're getting dysregulated and can they take themselves away. That's the sort of thing I'd be looking at there. A discussion to focus all staff resources on supporting one child with SEND during lessons might limit support available to other pupils affecting their education. Yeah, that's very straightforward. Balancing rights and responsibilities. School must find a balance between meeting the individual needs of the child with SEND through reasonable adjustments, maintaining a safe and productive environment for all students and staff. And schools are legally required to explore all possible solutions before deciding an adjustment is unreasonable. Work proactively to minimize risk, such as using risk assessments, behavior plans, and external support. Strategies to avoid compromises. Schools should employ these strategies to ensure adjustments are effective and equitable. Risk assessments identify potential risks and plan interventions to mitigate them. One-to-one support or a safe space to de-escalate. Alternative arrangements. Provide adjustments in ways that do not affect others. Use a separate workspace or adapt a group dynamic. Staff training. Train staff to handle challenging situations so adjustments are implemented smoothly without causing undue disruption. I just want to say on that doesn't mean manual handling courses. I think there's too many schools getting manual handling training put in place to deal with unruly children. Whereas if they were given training on how to de-escalate and how to talk to children correctly to that are having a meltdown and to identify that they are getting dysregulated before it gets to the point of meltdown, that would be much, much better. And that's a better way of handling challenging situations than some of the manual handling courses that are being put in place into schools now, particularly into primary schools, which I think is absolutely shocking. So that's what I'd be looking at within that staff training, not what manual handling have you got, what training have you got in understanding how to de-escalate that situation smoothly and effectively without causing massive problems down the way. External support involves specialists such as educational psychologists or behavioural consultants, develop strategies that work for everybody. When it becomes unreasonable, an adjustment may be deemed unreasonable if, despite the school's best efforts, the adjustment results in repeated harm to others. The adjustment disrupts the overall learning environment to such an extent that the quality of education for other pupils significantly declines. And the school lacks the resources, expertise, or facilities to implement the adjustments effectively, even after seeking external support. So again, we would discuss these things to make sure that everything has been followed, and if that is the case, not a lot we can do about it. But we have to make sure everything else has been looked at and sorted out first. Key considerations: finding a middle ground. It's essential for schools to work collaboratively with parents, the child, and external professionals to find solutions that meet the child's needs as far as possible. Minimize the impact on the safety and education of others, and the focus should always be on inclusion, creativity, and flexibility in finding adjustment that work for everyone involved. So I hope that makes things a little bit clearer on reasonable adjustments. They can't just say, no, we can't do it. There's a lot that goes into it, a lot of things that we need to consider, and the role of the SENCO within that as well. So hopefully that's been helpful to you today, and we'll see you at our next video. Thank you very much. Bye.